Nancy, Smokehouse, it's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach La.
Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, now I get a business to empower you so that you can do every and anything that you want to. Kicking it with Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La.
What's going on, beautiful people? Good evening and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach La, your favorite around the way therapist, right here on the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. As you guys know, we are radio with a purpose, and we are Boston's only Black-owned radio station that is on iHeartRadio. I am broadcasting live from Hyde Park, Massachusetts, and I know tonight is a big night in Boston. Shout out to the Boston Celtics that's in the finals right now, so I know a lot of y'all gonna catch the show tomorrow, because I know right now, from what I understand, we have made it over and we're in halftime. We're probably in the now going into the third quarter. But anyway, I still had to have my show. The show must go on. And so tonight's a juicy conversation, to be quite frank. I know some of y'all out there, might be dealing with this or have dealt with this topic in the past. So who better than to bring my good sister friend back? When I first started Conversations with Coach La almost 2 years ago, she was one of my second guest back then. And we have come a long way, me and her, since that time. And I'm excited to catch up with her, but I also want to hear a lot more about what she's been up to. Some of it I know because we follow each other on social media, but she had the opportunity to be a TedX speaker. She's also an affair recovery coach, which was something she was working on at the time that we became accountability partners and friends. We were part of a program called Course from Scratch. So we actually met online, and just the power of social media. And she's been my sister friend virtually. I've actually never met her in person, but we're gonna change that. We're gonna change that in 2024. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling with a minor in psychology. So it's no wonder that she is doing some of the things that she's doing now. She's also a podcast host, and she's the founder of Life After Infidelity. She has over 15 years of coaching experience and consulting on a corporate level, with 12 years of experience of creating and facilitating numerous workshops for organizations such as Black Women Healing Retreats, The Journey of Young Lady, Know Your Beautiful, Symposium, and the Unveiling the True Stories of Hope and Healing and Facing the Stigma of Mental Health, just to name a few. She has been facilitating some groundbreaking workshops, and she lends her voice to show advocacy through her story and numerous talk shows and podcasts that she's been a guest on. So without further ado, I'd like to bring my sister friend, Miss Briaina Latrice, into the show. What's up, girl?
Hey, sister friend.
Now, where you at? Now I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
No.
You can't hear me?
I was hearing you before.
I know. Can you hear me?
What I do? What did I do? No, I got my sound on. What in the good Jesus have I done?
Hello, hello.
Hold on, beautiful people.
Okay.
Let's see what didn't happen. My volume going up there. I'm not sure why I can't hear my sister on today. Oh man. All right. We got one other option. I can have you call in. We're gonna try you to call in and have you talk to me on the phone. So
Okay.
dial in and we'll try it that way. I'm not sure why I can't hear you. That hasn't happened in a long time. Where I can't hear you. I could hear you before.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna try this
Hello.
again. Go
Hello.
ahead and give me a call. Call into the studio 617-238-7111. And we're gonna try to do it by phone. I'm not sure why the sound is not working. Try that. All right. Let's see. All right. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, we gonna go with the telephone. All right, everybody. We gonna try it this way.
Is my volume, do I need to?
Mm-hmm.
Is that fine? Or
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can, but you know what I said? Let me get my earphone. I think that'll make it clear for my phone.
Yeah, I can hear you fine now. I couldn't hear you on the laptop. I'm not sure what happened, but we had sound earlier. We gonna get it together, y'all. We gonna get it together. Y'all bear with us here. Troubleshooting live on the air. Now, as many times I didn't did this show, I have not had any issues with the sound until today. So I'm not sure what that's about. Somebody probably touched the setting someplace that I can't figure out in this moment. So can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. All right. So we were talking about like the whole piece of how we came to connect with one another. And I'm really excited because your book is out now.
Yes, I am.
Yes, it is. It is out, and I know for me, when we started actually coming about connecting with one another, the book was not even in your mindset. You know, I'm looking at your screen, and your microphone says it's off on the computer.
Yeah, I muted it when when you called.
All right. So and I remember you were doing a lot of research, studying, you know, and your thought then was you were going to do a course, and you weren't talking about writing a book at the time. So it looks like all of that studying turned into the book. And
actually 2 books too, funny thing.
And I remember too, this was all a manifestation of your own experience with infidelity.
Yeah. Yeah, my own personal experience. So, like, I don't know when you want to get into it, but absolutely, yeah. I'm gonna hold off till I just see how you gonna guide it. But yeah, just my personal experience, and it's funny because, like you said, I was doing so much research, and really just afraid to put myself out there for the course, you know. And then seeing and I'm actually that research went into 2 books. I actually ended up writing 2 books. So, but I could only focus on publishing one at a time. So now I'm in the process of getting the second one published. So I'm excited.
You know, the reason why I paused for a second, because I know that writing a book is such a therapeutic experience for a lot of people. And in that experience of writing the book, there's a lot of healing that goes in there. So I've already had an opportunity to sort of peruse the book and sort of get a sense of how you went about doing it. But you want to take us through, like, when did you say, okay, I'm gonna write a guide? Because it's a 49-day devotional journey. And I thought
Yeah.
about the idea of it being 49 days, and I was curious around why 49 days.
Okay. So first of all, look, Boston in Dallas. I'm in Dallas, y'all. So shout out to Dallas. In the playoffs. I was telling Coach why I was being petty, and I wore my Dallas shirt today. So I'm excited.
Listen, it's all good. We gotta cheer for the underdog. It's cool.
Oh, don't do it.
I wasn't gonna try to go there, but you know.
I have not tuned in. The first game, I had to cut it off early. Like, I was sick to my stomach, so I'm nervous. I haven't even watched today.
No, I'm gonna wait. I mean, I had to do my show anyway, so. But
yeah,
I know I read your bio too, just to kind of warm you up. I mean, taking a step back, because you know we kind of got thrown off there a little bit with the sound. But when you think about your bio and what I read and just everything that you've gone through, I noticed you didn't talk about in your bio any of the trauma, any of the things that led you to write the book or even be a TEDx speaker. So it wasn't in the bio. You didn't talk about that stuff. So what's not in the bio? Who is Briaina Latrice?
Oh, who is Briaina Latrice? I love that question. Briaina is resilient. And I am a healer. Like, through my journey of infidelity, I have grown to learn, like, what my true calling and purpose is on this earth, and just how powerful I am. And one of the things, like, you know, I know people have and I guess we can kind of go into, like, how the book came about. Are you familiar with, like, ayahuasca? Have you heard of ayahuasca?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So ayahuasca is, it's a psychedelic, right? And a lot of people do it for, like, holistic purposes, in terms of, like, it helps you go deeper into, like, what is the root cause of your issues. And so what happened to me, and how the book really just started to come into fruition, was 2 years ago. I was in a relationship, or I was getting to know this guy. We were dating, and we ended up calling it quits, right? And I was sick to my stomach. Like, this breakup took me back to my divorce, like, and my experiences of infidelity. And I remember calling my coach and everything, and just, like, really, it was just, like, it was a lot for me. And I remember, like, just telling her how I was feeling, and how I was feeling, like, the initial feelings that I felt when I was going through the infidelity. And so she was like, you know what? I think it's time for you to do ayahuasca. I had been doing Reiki with her for, like, 2.5 years prior to this. And I had always been asking her about ayahuasca, and she was like, no, you're not ready for it. And so anyways, I did ayahuasca 2022 of November. I did it after Thanksgiving. And I had so many revelations. I had so many revelations during this experience. And, you know, she even told me, like, you're going to have some eye-opening experiences, and it's going to, like, really elevate you to the next level of, like, who you are. And when I tell you, Lakeisha, like, I came out of that experience, first of all, shocked about some things that were revealed to me. But then it also made me, like, not doubt myself. And I think when you and I had first met, I was really still hiding behind some of, like, the symptoms of infidelity, where I had a lot of insecurity, low self-esteem. So a lot of the beliefs, even though I knew that this was my calling, I just didn't feel confident enough to go out and execute on things. And after I done ayahuasca, I actually wrote this devotional in like 4 weeks because I was so inspired and empowered and encouraged that it just like started to spew out of me.
So let me make sure I understand this. So you took a psychedelic. Is that like a hallucinant?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And it is so when people talk about it, you normally hear them talk about flying over to South America because it has to be basically, they encourage you to take it and be administered by someone who is familiar with the drug and who can kind of help you because it does, you do go into hallucinations and stuff like that. And so, with my spiritual advisor, she's a Reiki specialist, and she's also equipped to perform ayahuasca ceremony. And so, she did it with me. We did it. It lasted for 24 hours. And
okay,
it ain't no joke.
Listen, okay, we learned something new on Conversations with Coach La. Listen, I'm always open to different ways of, I guess, going deeper in your consciousness and understanding who you are. I read a quote earlier that we weren't born for us to be consistently trying to get people to understand us. That really what we were supposed to do is really learn how to understand ourselves and to master ourselves. So it's interesting as you bring up being in a new relationship, experiencing the same things you did from your divorce, when you would think, okay, it's over, it's a new person. Right. So what are some things that you noticed were showing up for you in the new relationship? Did the new person cheat, or was this totally a different experience?
No, and that was the crazy part. No infidelity at all. But there's still trust. Like trust, even though I work on that with the women that I coach, like it's still a thing that you have to be intentional about working through every single day and in every relationship. And it was trust. And it was also like, I'll give you an example. One day, he and I had a disagreement, right? And he shut down. And I didn't hear from him for like 5 or 6 hours. Granted, even though it was like overnight, I didn't hear from him for a while. And girl, I went into this anxiousness. That night, I did not sleep at all. I was constantly rolling over to see if he had texted, to see if he had called. Like, I didn't sleep at all that night, right? And so I remember the next day when he and I spoke, I just told him, I said, hey, look, when you break down like that because of a disagreement, that's very triggering for me because my ex-husband would do that. And what happens is that brings this fear back to me that, oh, you're going to go out and cheat on me, because whenever I bring something to your attention that you don't particularly agree with and you shut down, that makes me feel like, hey, I'm used to this pattern. You know what I'm saying? And that's very healthy for me because I know that and I'm aware of that. And a lot of people aren't aware of like their trauma and their trigger responses. And so it's just like different things like that. If he would respond in a way that was familiar to me with my ex-husband, it was me making sure that I didn't respond in that way, but making sure that I communicated it so that he could then determine how he wanted to respond to that.
Yeah. You know, triggers are a very interesting thing. And it also kind of goes back to something that I had read about once you've been cheated on, the things that sort of are lingering. So low self-esteem, the situation also can force you to feel as if, you know, the next person's going to cheat on you too. Right. So the trust issues become really profound. The things you're mentioning now about, you know, the anxiety and the fear, which you also put in your book, that a healthy relationship shouldn't feel like fear, because fear is connected to punishment. But then it makes me think about this new person that's dating you has no idea that what they're doing is doing that to you, because they may just need the space. And in some ways, you shouldn't really have to ask a person for space. Like sometimes you just got to take your space, especially after a disagreement. So now that you're sort of here, like, is that like now a disclaimer you give to a partner, or do you feel like now that is no longer a trigger?
No, it's definitely a disclaimer. Yeah. Just because I know how I respond when that happens, and like a little bit more of context. So like I gave him his space, but then he said it was all good and we were cool, but I noticed that he was still pulling back. And so that was the part where it was like, okay, well, we've had this conversation. You said it was water under the bridge, but you're still acting distant to me. You know what I'm saying? And so it's really important for me to be straightforward in how I communicate what my triggers are, just so they can be aware and make sure that they properly communicate like their responses too.
Communication, effective communication. And it also sounds like vulnerability, right? To be able to share that. Now, question for you, when you're thinking about going back into dating, this is just a little bit going off topic a bit. When do you share that though? That is something that is a thing for you? Like, shutting down and or pulling away, because in relationships there's going to be these dips, it won't always be the same level of tension and care. Like there's ebbs and flows.
And you have to be very careful about when you are vulnerable with someone, especially in the dating space, right? Because like if you tell somebody too soon, they could be a manipulator, right? And then they'll take those vulnerabilities and they're able to manipulate you, moving forward. But I would say that if you are moving it from like the talking stage to like where maybe y'all are working toward some form of exclusivity, right? That's kind of how I've always been doing it now. It's like once we know that we're moving to a space where we're going to be a little bit more intentional and possibly go to the next level, then that is where I open up just a little bit more and kind of share like some of those things. In the beginning, I always look at dating like we talk about, it's just collecting data. So I'm really initially just seeing the person's character, and if this is somebody that I can grow and trust in a relationship. And then once I collect that data and then we decide, hey, we're going to go to the next level, that is where I kind of open up about some of my triggers and things like that.
So that's interesting. So in your book, you said one of the scariest experiences in life is having your heart broken by someone you love. It becomes even more challenging to decide whether to move on or give your heart to them again. In relation to infidelity, we often find ourselves wasting precious time trying to figure out the best course of action. And then you say you've worked with many women who have faced betrayal, and a common sentiment among them all is feeling like they wasted precious time. So this idea of time, right? And, when do you present, I got all this stuff that's from my past relationship, my past marriage, of what my ex did that I'm still dealing with. Is that a symbol of not being healed if that's still following you?
When you say still following you, for me, that means that you don't have an awareness of how it shows up in relationships. I think that people who are able to effectively communicate, like, hey, this has been my past experience, and even though I am working through it, I am aware that these are some of my responses. I really think that that is a healthy way of showing, like, yeah, I'm I'm going through the process, or I am healed. And because of this healing, I am aware of how this shows up, and I'm able to be proactive versus reactive, how I've always been in the past relationships, right? Because we talk about that, like when we show up with baggage and we make partners, like new partners, pay for the betrayals and the offenses of past partners, but we don't even know why we're acting this way or responding this way. So I would say because we know how this can potentially show up in a relationship, we're able to get in front of it beforehand.
And I think that's important, because when we think about what are some of the reasons, although these are never a person's choice to cheat or, to have an affair, it's always their choice. But we would be remiss not to think about some of the things that lead up to it. And some of the things are not communicating these things in advance, right? And not being able to feel safe in a relationship to share what you're feeling without consequence, fear, or punishment. So sometimes that is one of the things that sort of allows people to emotionally connect outside of their relationship. And I found that a lot of people who have engaged in infidelity didn't start there. We always say it usually starts with the emotional connection before it goes physical, and which leads me to people's needs, emotional needs in relationship and gender. Often what we hear about men in particularly is that they're not expressive or vulnerable about what it is that they need. Now, I've found a difference in that, in men coming to therapy and also doing couples therapy, that often men are communicating. It's just that often, and women, y'all might get mad at me, women are not listening. Women are not listening to what the men are articulating that are concerns or bothersome. Often it's sort of like on deaf ears, some of the things that are troublesome or may make him feel unsafe or uncomfortable. We can tend to even tell him to man up, like, he's being too sensitive, or, and he's like, yeah, when you talk to me like that, I don't like that. Or, the pressure of being a provider is a lot. I don't have space to come in and talk about those burdens, because then you go into catastrophizing and anxiety around everything's going to fall apart. So I can't come to you with some of this stuff, but I've been talking to my coworker and she listens. I never meant to sleep with her. She was just a listening ear initially. And so a lot of these things, I know that we can start to point fingers, and I think men often get a bad rap, but I got a lot of female clients that cheat too.
It's so funny. My cousin, she's a nail tech. And she was like, girl, I need to come on your show because the girls be talking, honey, in the nail shop. She's like, I got just as many female clients. She's like, these women cheat too. She's like, don't be out here thinking it's only men. And it's not,
No.
And there's a lot, right? So relationship specialist, Esther Perel, she talks about, like, people fight for three things. They fight for power and control, closeness and care, or respect and recognition. And what that made me go back to is safety. And, I think we always try to pit this word safety against men and women and say, okay, well, women just want safety. Well, men want safety too, right?
Yes.
And I always say that, like, both of us in a relationship, we want three things is what I believe. I believe we want safety, certainty, and security. And, like, when you translate that to me, that looks like, do you understand? Do you care? And can I trust you? Because if you truly understand my needs and my wants and my desire, then you'll care for that and you'll nurture that, right? And you'll listen and you'll really try to understand my side of it, even if you don't agree, right? Like, everything, just because I don't agree with you, it doesn't mean that it has to be an argument. And when people are able to feel safe in relationships, that's where that safety and security and the certainty shows up. And that's where that trust comes in. And, to your point, infidelity doesn't just happen overnight, right? We know that. And if we go back to what Esther Farrell said, where she said the three things that people are fighting over: power and control, closeness and care, respect and recognition. A lot of the time, one of those things, if you go back into your relationship, one of those things have been highlighted. Like, that's been the repetitive theme, right, in your argument. And one of the things that she always talks about, which I really, really love, she says that like behind every complaint is a desire.
Now that is so on point. That's very true.
Right. So what we'll do is we'll show up in the relationship and we'll say, why did you only just get yourself water? Versus saying, hey babe, could you get me a glass of water? Right. And so it shows up in different ways, and we're not actually sitting down, male and female, and actually having these conversations with each other. And one of the things that I always talk about is, what type of questions are you asking your partner, right? Like when you guys are getting to know each other, because we always talk about, like, what's our love language and how does our love language, like, how do we show up in our love language and stuff like that. But sometimes we need to ask each other, like, hey, what's your trauma responses? How do you respond? How do you respond to a situation when you're not happy, or you feel on edge, or you feel disrespected, or you feel triggered? Like, what are your trauma responses?
Thank you.
Because that then helps us better understand each other.
So I think that's what I was getting at when I said, well, when do you bring this up? And I was asking about timing. And if you know this about yourself, then when you're dating and you're thinking about a partner, do you spring this on them when you decided to be exclusive? and now it's like, well, you triggered me, and then my ex used to do it, because now it's like, well, wait a minute, I'm not your ex, right? Versus it being about, no, this is actually something that I've learned that I need in relationship, right? So I've learned through self-awareness that what I need when we have a disagreement is that you say, hey babe, I'm gonna need a couple days to process this, what we've talked about, right? Versus it being, my ex-husband used to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm afraid now you're going to do what he did and cheat on me. Because then it's not about the present day moment, and it's not about that person anymore. It's about you're actually now going back to what you actually experienced in the past, almost like PTSD. So that brings me to my question about what therapy means to you, because on the show, that's what we talk about, right? And you may remember early when you was on here, so eons ago, right? Therapy plays a great part, but relationships are often mirrors that helps us understand the things that we still need to heal, or desires that we have yet to speak come from being in partnership. So what does therapy mean to you now in this new Briaina Latrice?
Oh my gosh. Well, and you know what? Because I still want to touch on, like, the time thing. I think that I don't really have a set time that somebody should share all of this, right? Because again, you have to make sure that it's a safe space for you to share that. Because I think that if you share it prematurely, then that person, without truly getting to know you, could already pass judgment on you and be like, oh, she got baggage, I don't want to, you know what I'm saying, deal with that. But I think that you also don't wait too far along in the relationship. And here's why. One of the steps of rebuilding trust is ability. And you want to make sure that whoever you're getting in a relationship with has the ability to give you what you need out of that relationship. And I think that sometimes we hold on too long to like our vulnerabilities. And then by the time we express them, that person's character shows that they're not able to be the person that we desire in a mate. But because we have invested so much time in the relationship, it's harder for us to walk away. So I think you have to use wisdom on like when is the perfect time to actually share this so that you can gauge, is this somebody that I want to continue to pursue getting to know, or should I walk away because they don't have the ability to be the partner that I desire?
Which is why I say be your authentic self out the gate. Like I
Mhm.
hear where you're coming from, and then I respectfully sort of say, if they think you're too much, they think you're too much. If they think that you got baggage and they don't want to deal with it, great. Like that's
Mhm.
part of what I guess I'm saying is, if you come off like you got it all together and you are, you know, none of this is bothering you anymore and you're ready to date, but deep down inside you still need a partner that sort of is going to hold space for certain things, better find out sooner than later that this person don't want to deal with all of that, right? Like why
Mhm.
draw them in with this perception that you don't have this going on, right? Like
Yeah.
sooner than later, like, hey, so I like a lot of attention. You know, I like a lot of communication. Don't get me, you know, don't sell me on something you can't keep going. For me, if you start with texting me quickly and doing that's what I'm gonna expect, right?
Mhm.
So start showing, don't show me something that you can't keep up. Is basically what I'm getting at. We can put our best foot forward and show, you know, what we call our best self, and not
Mhm.
the messy side of
Mhm.
no, I still have these moments where I'm afraid somebody's going to cheat on me. I still am
That's true.
really, really afraid of opening my heart up to someone. And I'm not
Mhm.
saying that you shouldn't date in this space, because I get that we still need connection. But I think when people do something that makes you uncomfortable, I think you should speak up sooner than later about, you know, hey, it didn't really feel really good to not, you know, hear from you for several days. That helps you set a
Mhm.
boundary and an expectation. Because if it's an
Mhm.
early stage of dating and you're expecting to speak to this person on a daily basis, they might need to know that.
Yeah.
They might need to know that you're tracking like that, so they can say right away, like, yeah, so I don't really communicate that often in this early stage. And then you got other people
Mhm.
that they communicate a lot in the beginning. And then when you actually
Mhm.
are in a committed relationship, they actually do sort of scale it back, because they feel like you should be secure already in that where
Mm.
your relationship is. And for some
Yeah.
people with attachment styles that are anxious and insecure, or they got trauma, that pulling back, they sometimes will overthink it and overanalyze it and make it something that it actually isn't. And every time there's a fight, it's the same thing. They need more connection, not less
Mhm.
connection, where the other person needs some space and to recharge. And you just don't realize each other's needs are really different.
Yeah, and I think that's communication. Like, I think everything boils down to communication, right? And it's like that, to me, that is what my new take on therapy is about. Um, is really truly understanding who you are. Like, I think in therapy, you're really able to kind of understand like who you are and
Mm-hmm.
how you show up in any type of relationship. I'm talking about parental and friendships and romantic. And then being able to be authentic in that and be okay with communicating that.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times too, you know, for people who have been cheated on, there's a lot of shame behind that. And that shame allows you not to show up as your authentic self, right? It allows you to hide behind that mask. But being authentic says, hey, this is who I am. And it's not a bad thing. And it's not baggage, because I have healed from it. And thankfully I've healed from it. But what I've learned is sometimes these things trigger me, or this is how I'll show up, or this is how, you know, you ignoring me for a period of time or inconsistency for a period of time, this is how it might make me think. You know, I become anxious and I start to overthink and I start to be insecure. And I think that that's really what counseling does, is it allows you to see those things that kind of have been running your life for the most part, but you just weren't aware of how they were showing up.
I think that's spot on. I think once you get to a space of knowing thyself, you also can do some things to practice self-care, to monitor that in yourself that you may not necessarily even need to go to your partner and say, when you don't call me, I'm anxious and I'm about to lose I can't sleep. But like being able to practice some mindfulness and to be able to say, hey, me and my partner, you're telling yourself this, me and my partner are not going to speak again. Like I know that he needs space after we have a disagreement. He said he was fine. And just because he takes a minute or he's not immediately, now I could be overly tracking his behaviors now because I'm still in my feelings. And so I think therapy helps you to be able to kind of go, okay, what part of this is him? What part of this is me? Right? Which part of this is what I've experienced in my past? And what part of this is present day? Because sometimes your new partner may have given you no reason to feel as if they're going anywhere. Yeah. Or that they would do anything like that. But in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I didn't really know the last one was going to do it. And that took me completely by surprise. So one of the things that I read too, which I thought was interesting, is that 22% of ever married African-American men, research indicates that infidelity rates can vary significantly across different racial and ethnic groups. For instance, a study that was published in the Journal of Marriage and Family found that African Americans reported higher rates of infidelity compared to whites and Hispanics. Specifically, about 22% of ever married African American men and 12% of African American women reported being unfaithful, compared to 16% of white men and 9% of women. I thought that was interesting. And then they cited some other things that economic status, education, different things like that were contributing to some of those factors. And I was like, isn't that interesting? And that 42% of Black women and 30% of white women will have their first marriages end in divorce within 10 years.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So like,
and it's crazy because I'm even experiencing that like in my friend circle. But then also just with all of my clients, like most of my clients, they have been married between 8 to 10 years and they're going through their divorce.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I wonder, as we think about when people choose to get married, if that plays a part in it. There's a huge press often in your 20s, up until I think your early 30s, especially your biological clock is ticking and is this push to start a family. And then if you also in have a religious background, you see that's the transition of like, when are you going to get a wife? When are you going to get a husband? And I also believe that is also a self-discovery point for a lot of people, where up until then, society, their parents, everyone's sort of been shaping who they are. And I feel like your 20s and your 30s, you sort of start to really figure out who you are. So if you met this person in your 20s and you start to grow and develop, they may not really meet the needs or where you're going. And I'm wondering if that's playing a part. What's some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's funny. I have the belief, like I tell my little cousins and stuff now, I'm like, don't get married before you're 30. Because like you said, prior to your 30s, and even in your early 30s, like you're in this self-discovery. You're just trying to figure things out and you don't know who you are. And the thing about dating, like younger, is that we're dating for who we are present, right? And we're not thinking long term, okay, who does this person want to become? What is this person's desires? And That's really what happens. Is like a lot of the times, what leads to infidelity is because that connection has been lost. And when that connection is lost, usually that's when the commitment follows, right? But we know when the connection is lost, a lot of times it's because of the breakdown in communication, but it's also just the breakdown of vision and where one person wants to go. I've seen it one too many times within my clients where they're wanting something completely opposite of what their partner is wanting. And that's why you hear that narrative, right? It's like we've grown apart. Mm-hmm. You really have grown apart because who you both were in your 20s is not who y'all both desired to be in your 30s and 40s and 50s. But we're not taught how to date for who we're becoming. We're taught to date for who we are right now, right?
Which makes total sense, though. Like, I mean, when you think about we're telling people to be present, I think the vows say a lot, and I always go back to the premise of why did you get married, and what do those vows say? You know, I had a client once say to me that there's a scripture that says once the man cheats, that you as the woman are no longer committed to him. Like that breaks the seal, right? And at that point, you're no longer married. You as the wife have the right to walk if there's infidelity. But then that brings the cultural aspects into it in terms of monogamy, right? Because culturally, that's not the case. Some other cultures, men can have many wives and can do that, and that's not seen as cheating or a breaking of vows with the wife. So I think that the idea of walking away and what that means, I think, has a lot more to do with the commitment of you're supposed to be mine, and that's a betrayal. And there's a lot more psychology that goes into that makes you feel like you're not enough or something's wrong with you, which goes back to fear. So a man decides and says, hey, I love you as my wife. I married you when you were 20 and I have all this love for you, but we are growing apart, and sexually my needs are changing. The activities I want to do are different. And what I wanted in terms of a wife is changing. It doesn't mean that you're not a good person. How do you have that conversation with someone that you do care about without hurting their feelings? So I find that a lot of times in couples therapy, it's hard to have these real, authentic, vulnerable conversations about your needs without the person getting angry or getting mad or feeling like they're not enough, because in essence, you're kind of being told you're not meeting my need. And we're also told in marriage, you're supposed to be your partner's everything.
Yep.
So it kind of sets you up.
No, it does. Especially in traditionally, right? Marriages were really created for economic purposes, right?
Let's talk about it. That's the westernized way. It's very true. And I don't think we talk about it enough, is that westernized culture, society, is monogamy is connected to the business side of it, right? In terms of bringing two people together. Like if you think about taxes, how do you tax multiple wives?
Right. and well, but also infidelity has always been prevalent in marriages, right? On the men's side, right? Monogamy was really...
Go ahead, break it down, sis. Go ahead.
Monogamy was really for the woman, right?
Talk about it.
For the woman because of, okay, well, when I die, who does my land go to? When I die, who does my cattle go to? When I die, is this actually my seed?
Yes.
Right? So that's why monogamy was often viewed as like a stickler for women. Because if women were to go off and get somebody else pregnant, then how would they know who the seed was, right?
Let's talk about it.
Then now we've westernized marriage, right? So where we're talking about in the past, it had to do with economic purposes and who everything belongs to once the man passes away, right? But now with this westernized belief, it's about love, right? And we have to be our partner's everything. They have to be on our level intellectually. They have to enjoy the same activities that we enjoy. They have to have the same goals and aspirations, and and what happens is that because now we're marrying for love instead of economic purposes, when that person betrays us, it's now affecting us psychologically and emotionally. And so it's, what I'm saying? Like, it's so much deeper. Like, once we really look into what infidelity and the impact that infidelity has on us now under this westernized belief.
I think that's again spot on. And I think when we think about healing, because again, your book is about healing the heart from infidelity, a 49-day devotional journey. There is lots of biblical references, lots of insight, and then reflections, which I think is really important, is to get to a place of understanding how you got here, is to be able to take a minute and step back and go, well, who caused the breaking up? Who did the cheating? And what was the reason for it? And I know a lot of times people, there's no reason for it. There's no reason for it. Of course, it's always the other person's choice to engage in cheating. It's not your fault. And I think that's really important, is that this isn't about fault. It's about understanding. And to be able to heal, you need wisdom, right? You need the wisdom and the understanding to be able to move forward, to be able to open your heart up again, and to not be triggered in your next relationship. You have to sort of take that step back. Was it that you grew apart? Was it the same argument all the time? Was it that you weren't, meeting all of the person's needs? Were you trying to meet all the needs, but they weren't receptive and you still were trying anyway, but they were already saying, you know what, I'm disconnected. They were showing in everything that they were doing that maybe they didn't want it. Maybe they started articulating, I'm not sure I want this anymore. Maybe there were other things that they were doing and saying that you were like, but wait, but why? We're married, or, you committed to me. So it's just paying attention to all of those things. So I always ask about people's bet on self moments, because, I've watched you just flourish. From when we first started, and you not really being that confident and not really wanting to like step out there and talk to people about being cheated on and whether or not this was really what you were supposed to do. Was you talking about it going to make people think that you hadn't healed? I don't know if you remember us talking about that, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes,
if I
ma'am.
start becoming a fair recovery coach, does that then mean that folks are gonna be like, well, you really ain't letting this go? Like, this has now became your testimony has become a business. So when I think about bet on self moments, is again, it's about, if not now, then when? If not me, then who? And other than what I've seen and what other people may have seen, are there other bet on self moments that are not as publicly visible that you would like to share with the listeners?
Ooh, bet on self. Look, I'm trying to think of so many things, but I'll say this. I was just thinking about this the other day. Like, I had my first event this year, February of this year, around Valentine's. And I was nervous. Like, I did not want to do this event. But I met another chick, and she held me accountable to doing the event. And, girl, I sent out, like, sponsorship emails and stuff like that. And I was nervous to even do that. But one of my classmates, because I don't think I told you, like, I'm back in school getting my LPC now. And I met a chick, and she was just like, hey, I believe in what you're doing, and how can I be of help to you? And I was like, well, I need to send sponsorship letters, but I'm just not, I'm just starting. I've never done sponsorship. I haven't done anything. So she was like, send me the list. I'm going to send them out for you. Girl, she started sending out these sponsorship emails, and people just were responding left and right, to where I ended up having not to pay for anything out of pocket for this event. And people were just sending in, like, stuff. Like, hey, if you're doing giveaways, I'm gonna send you 13 bath salts and 16 boxes of this and blah blah blah. Fast forward to a couple of days ago, somebody sent me a video of she's a very well-known social media blogger. She has like 500,000 followers. She's on the Drive Time commercial. And so people were sending me, because she just started talking about her story of leaving her husband. And so people were like, hey, Brie, you should reach out to her. You should reach out to her. And I let it sit for like a whole week, because I was like, she ain't going to never respond to me. You know what I'm saying? And so, girl, I had just got through reading my devotional and praying. And I was like, okay, today I'm going to let faith take over. I'm going to put fear to the side. I emailed her. And she responded back in like 30 minutes. And we are meeting tomorrow because she has agreed to come on my podcast to talk about her marriage ending in divorce, right? And so that is what betting on self is really like what you said earlier when you were speaking at a church, is if you call yourself a child of God, but you still operate in fear, right? And I think about this scripture that has been with me for a while now. It's the story of the man where he took his son, who was possessed. He took him to the disciples originally, and the disciples couldn't cast the demon out, right? And so essentially, Jesus comes down from the mountain and they hear all this ruckus, and Jesus is like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? And so the father perceives and he says, hey, this is my son. He's been possessed for a while. Your disciples tried, but they couldn't cast it out. And so Jesus was like, okay, cool. I can heal your son. You want me to heal your son? And the father was like, if you can do anything, help me. And Jesus was like, if I can, he said, do you not know who I am? What you mean if I can, right? And the father said, I believe, help my unbelief. And it stuck with me. And I was like, God, we've seen time and time in scripture where people who did not believe, you turned them away to the wayside. Why is it that this man who literally told Jesus he doesn't believe, he went ahead and healed his son? And so I went into studying that scripture, and what I found out was that it says that the reason why Jesus healed that man's son was because he acknowledged that he was weak and he needed our help. He needed Jesus' help. And a lot of the times we're holding on to so much pain. We're holding on to so much hurt. We're holding on to so much anger, right? When God says, cast all your cares on him, for he cares on you. He cares for you, right? But God says those who cry in tears will reap in joy, right? Like he says, my power is made perfect in weakness. And so I say that to say that even when you are afraid, God, I believe, help my unbelief. I'm still going to send her this message. I'm afraid, but I'm going to send it. I'm afraid, but I'm going to put this book out. I'm afraid, but I'm going to put my message out. I'm afraid of what people are going to say and how they're going to look on me. But because I believe you, and because I have acknowledged my fear, and you said that you will draw nigh to me if I draw nigh to you, then I trust your word that you will never leave me nor forsake me. Then I'm just going to give it all out. And you're going to let your will be done for my life. And so when I think about betting on self, it's letting it all out.
I know that's a word. Y'all heard that? Y'all are tuned into Conversations with Coach La right here on the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. That's my homegirl dropping all kinds of nuggets and wisdom. Briaina Latrice. She's logging in from Dallas tonight, although she ain't repping Celtics. She's repping her team. But I tell you this, I appreciate you. I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate your accountability. I appreciate your obedience, your discipline, because I've watched you be very focused on a lot of different projects. So I receive it. I hope all the listeners receive it, because she's talking to you. I know you right there that's sitting on the other side, be it iHeart, YouTube, Instagram, and you was looking for something to help you heal from whatever you're going through, especially if it has anything to do with infidelity or having your heart broken. You just need to really trust that whatever's for you is going to be for you. And you don't have to be afraid of being alone. You don't have to be afraid of any of that. Hold on. Let me let this play real quick.
The unexpected, unorthodox radio from Boston and beyond. Heat981fm.com and iHeart Station.
As I said, you don't have to be afraid. You got to have faith over fear. You guys, thank you so much for listening to another Conversations with Coach La episode right here on the Urban Heat. And Brianna, thank you for coming on. You got to come back for part 2.
Thank you for having me, sis.
Yes,
It's been a
absolutely.
pleasure.
Tell them real quick where they can find you and we're going to sign off.
Yes, you can find me on all socials at life_after_infidelity. And you can also reach out to me online at lifeafterinfidelity.net. And you can also reach me at affairrecoverycoach@gmail.com.
Absolutely, you guys. You already know what to do. Keep it locked on Urban Heat 98.1 FM. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the Morning Cafe. And your favorite Around the Way therapist is signing out. Keep betting on self and have a great week. See you later.
I